The Midwest tour, the Twin City tour, extrude this, extruder tour.
Extrude that city?
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway.
They'll come up eventually.
Hey everyone, it's Jake Clark with Fargo 3D Printing. Now we're on site at Power Up Props base location here in Minneapolis. Brian has actually been on our podcast before, but this is actually, you're back in college at that time, and now you're what? How long has it been since you graduated?
What year is it?
It's 2017 at this time.
So I graduated in May of 2015 with my Master's of Architecture.
Okay.
So it's been 2 years, almost.
And you've been in Minneapolis those full 2 years, correct?
Nope, I moved to Grand Forks, North Dakota for a year, and then ended up here about a year ago.
And you've kind of always had the props thing kind of in the background as a hobby, and now you've kind of gone a little bit more, not really mainstream with it, but actually turned it into more than just a hobby, correct?
Yeah, so Brick Replicas was our original endeavor, and we kind of started that with the intention of doing our own thing, like by accident. So Harrison Cricks, also known as Vulpin Props, made a portal gun and posted online like step by step what he did, and was like, hey, you can buy this all at a hobby store or at Home Depot and make your own portal gun. And I was like, oh, I could do that. Found out I could kind of do that. But so that kind of... I pulled my friend Nick into it, and we started making props, and we started posting things on the Replica Prop Forum, a little on Facebook, but we never really used social media with that. But we started getting commission work through Etsy and Facebook, and maybe a little bit of YouTube stuff, but that kind of got the ball rolling. And then when I graduated, I moved, and we stopped making props. So... I kind of had that itch afterwards. You probably know that feeling. I mean, you started a business on it, so.
Well, yeah, we started our stuff, in the basement, and then it's like, oh, well, might as well keep going with this. So, and you guys have actually gotten a lot of kind of news now with is it the
Fallout terminal?
The Fallout terminal? Okay. Yeah. I don't play Fallout, unfortunately. I play more of Assassin's Creed side of things, but gotcha. So let's maybe just take a look at what you got on your table here, and you can kind of go over the different projects that you've been working on, sure. And we can kind of go from there.
All right, let's do it. So my workbench right now is kind of a mix of some of my personal cosplay. So scattered around here are some parts for the Fallout 4 laser pistol, and I'll give you guys a link to that. Lilykill is the artist. He's awesome and posts all of his stuff on my mini factory, so anybody can download the files and print it themselves. So recently we actually we joined the studios program at my mini factory, and I usually don't print other people's stuff. Just kind of, I don't know, maybe the maker in me is like, we want to make our own stuff, and I feel bad making stuff that other people have designed, but his stuff is really awesome. And when we joined the studios program, I wanted to make something from there as kind of a, hey, we're part of the, community now, and I found that, and I've always wanted to make something from Fallout of that scale, and Nick's busy doing stuff, and I'm not the greatest 3D modeler, so yeah. So I'll give you guys the link, and you can put it in the bottom, and if you guys are watching this and want your own, check him out on Instagram and all that stuff. But so that's kind of what I'm working on now personally. In terms of Power Up Props, so Brick Replicas started making one of these. It's the N7 Valkyrie rifle, and we 3D printed the whole thing, and I think it took, I don't know if it was a couple hundred hours of print time, and it was 30 some parts, and that was kind of our first endeavor in fully 3D printing a prop. So these are scattered all over my apartment, and it's kind of on my to-do list. So with this one, Nick actually remodeled it, and everything snaps together pretty well. The first one that we made, not so much.
A lot of sanding.
It's just a huge mess, but I mean, his files are great, but we were pretty inexperienced at what we were doing, so the snaps and the tolerances weren't quite there. But now that we're working on stuff more, everything's kind of that snap fit, so that's what we're working on. So this is kind of the guy that's got us jump started recently. We made one originally that was just almost like a nightlight, so to speak, I guess. That's what someone commented, was like, that would make an awesome nightlight. I was like, why didn't I think of that? But it just had LEDs in it, and it was just a light up screen, which is cool, but not quite as cool as sticking a Raspberry Pi in it and making it play video games. So,
can you pick it up?
Yeah. So in the back of it, if I can open it without knocking everything apart. So there's actually a little Raspberry Pi in there and a screen. The trick was getting this all to fit in here. And as you can see, I never glued everything together, so it just kind of snap fits. And I'm working on another one of those. It's a little better. Yeah, it's part of the learning process of. I'm not an engineer, so some of this, like some of the little intricacies of this, isn't quite up to my. I wouldn't say pay scale, but you know,
it's you haven't gotten there yet.
yeah. I work on a larger scale buildings, so
Okay. And you use what software when you're doing your architectural stuff? Then
Autodesk, Revit.
okay. And then what does was it Matthew? Nick? Sorry. I was kind of close. M&N. So what kind of software does he primarily use then?
Autodesk Inventor.
Okay.
So he's really good at figuring out how stuff works together, where I'm more of a massing kind of thing, you know? He actually makes all the joins and figures out how stuff can snap together and, yeah, that kind of stuff, so.
And so walk us through, like, you have a couple pieces here that are the red pieces. So what are those and what process are those going through right now versus, you know, like the more metallic part here that looks more complete? Can you explain what point of the process those are in?
So usually what we do, or my preferred process, is using a mix of 3M Bondo. And in this case, I like using spot filler for 3D printed objects because it works quicker and you don't have to mix stuff together. So Bondo is an auto body filler and it's a 2-part mix. So you have to get the mix right and then mix it and use it before it hardens. Where the spot filler comes in a tube and it's already pre-hardened. It's all in there. So as soon as it's exposed to air, it starts to dry. So looking at this guy right here. So this is a mask from Dishonored. Another cosplay I'm working on slowly but surely. But so this guy, you can see the Bondo in there. And what I usually do is lather it on. It's kind of like peanut butter. Okay. It feels kind of like you're smearing a red peanut butter on a 3D printed prop. But when it sands down, I don't know if you want to feel that, but it gets rid of the lines.
Oh, yeah. And how is that? What's the orientation of the part when it was in the printer?
Like this.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the first process. Usually I prime it with, let's see. I have a can here. There we go. Rust-Oleum filler primer, which goes on really thick and it's meant to be sanded off. So it kind of helps to start filling those holes and then it's primed and ready and this sticks a lot better to it. So those are usually some combination of my first steps. Sometimes I do the Bondo first and then hit it with a spot filler to get any gaps that I missed. And then I hit it with a regular primer, sand it, slowly increasing the grit, and then finally top coating it. And then doing a mix of weathering with acrylics. So if you look at this, Aaron actually painted this one. So Power Up Props is 3 of us.
Okay.
It's me, Nick, and Aaron. And I do most of the social media stuff and kind of do the finishing aspect of it. And Aaron does a lot of the final painting. So he's really into Warhammer and all those kind of stuff. And he does amazing work. So that's an example of something he did.
Okay. What was I going to say? Where did you learn a lot of this post-processing? Is it just more of, try this, try that? Is it, is there any good, not one-stop shop places to go find, for like a starting of doing some of your own home props that you want to look at, or just even finishing some of the Thingiverse files that are out there? Explain that, learning curve. Sure. And where you found some of that info.
So I got into 3D printing probably 2010, 2011, where there wasn't a lot of prop making in it at the time. So people were using a lot of the techniques to do 3D printing finishing that they were doing with handmade props like out of wood and the like. So the replica prop form, or the rpf.com, is kind of where I learned to do everything. That's where a lot of the bigger prop makers started, and they'd post build threads of how they did everything, like step by step. And as they're working on a project, people will post a thread and they'll have updates, every day or every week or whatever it is. So people explain their techniques and other people comment and are like, hey, I tried this and this worked really well. And someone will be like, oh, I put wood filler on it and that doesn't work at all, But so that's kind of where the Bondo started. Have you ever seen EVA foam used for making armor and the like?
I've heard about it. I haven't seen the whole process of it, but I have heard about it.
Yeah, I think the replica prop form, one of the users, I think his name was Evil FX, if I remember right. But that's where that originated, and he made Mass Effect armor out of it. So a lot of different techniques come from there.
Okay, very interesting. So on the 3D printing side of things, have you noticed different materials act differently? What's one of your more favorite materials to work with, or kind of how did you find out what materials worked best?
So initially we had the MakerBot Replicator 2, and we never used anything but PLA on it. So I've I'm not very experimental with filaments, except what you guys send me sometimes. So usually PLA. Biome's my favorite by far. It sands beautifully, so it's great for prop making. It's got that silky smooth finish on it. It looks great.
And you print that on the Taz or the and we can get to those in a second. But do you print that on the Taz or the Maker Select Plus or both?
Both.
Yeah. What temperature profiles have you seen those working with on your process?
So with PLA, I usually use 205. On the Maker Select Plus, I've been doing 210.
Okay. And with Biome, what have you found with that?
Exactly the same.
Okay.
Yeah, all of my PLA settings work great for it.
Okay. Cool. Well, should we take a look at some of the printers that he's got and go from there?
All right.
So this was your first printer, and you bought this 3 years ago?
2 years ago, something like that. Yeah. So this one's been an absolute workhorse. It's actually down at the moment. I'm waiting on some parts from Lulzbot support, but I've put tens of thousands of hours through it. This is the first time I've ever had a problem with it, and
what's wrong with it currently?
The hot end. I don't know. There's a short in the heater or something, so I need to replace the whole unit. So, yeah,
those are never fun.
No, but it's quick and easy to fix. So,
what kind of upgrades have you done to the Lulzbot, if any?
It's stock.
Okay.
Totally stock. I've thought about replacing this fan with a blower, but it works. If it's not broken, don't fix it. It's kind of how that's gone with me. But
it looks like you put a light bar in there then.
Oh yeah. I guess it's on right now. That was the one upgrade I've done to it.
Okay.
Yeah, my only complaint with the Lulzbot Mini
is not being able to see your part.
Yeah, well, especially in this hallway when the lights are off at night. Yeah. Or actually, my apartment back in Grand Forks had really bad lighting because we had like 15-foot ceilings in it. Okay. So I had just a cheap little lamp pointed at it. I was like, I've got so many LED strips laying around, so I just threw it up there and it worked.
Perfect. Cool. Mm-hmm. And then the next one that you have is the Monoprice Maker Select Plus. And you just got this in, 3-4 weeks ago?
2 months ago, maybe?
Oh, okay.
Something like that. Yeah. I was fighting with what printer to get next. And, everybody's raving about these right now. So I was curious. And
they are very popular right
now. The price tag was so good that I was just like, if it sucks, I'll take it back. But I kept it.
And then the upgrades that you've done to this is the frame stabilizer, the active cooling fan, and then the filament guide, correct?
Yep. Pretty simple stuff. And then I got this little guy.
The little spatula holder on the side. So when you were leveling this machine, did you have any issues with the leveling? Because I know that's one thing that there's been a couple people that right out of the box it doesn't level. So what have you found when setting this machine up that was different than from, say, like the Lulzbot?
Well, so the Lulzbot, I don't know. So we had, I think it was 6 MakerBot Rep 2s at NDSU that we were running. And with that kind of experience with the 3-point leveling, going from that to this 4-point system, piece of cake. So for me, that was so temperamental that going to this with the 4 points. So one of the things nobody is talking about, so whenever I see a post on Reddit about it, I'm like, buy a feeler gauge. It's the best thing ever because it's always consistent and I've never had a single problem with it. So, well, in terms of these two, naturally auto leveling is like the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. Besides my fiance.
That's just because she's in the other room.
No, I mean that. I love you. But in terms of 3D printing, no, auto leveling, it makes it so much easier.
And what do you have on order now?
The Prusa i3 is it MK2S? 2S. Yeah.
Because that one has the upgraded stuff on it.
Yeah, it's something, I read the blog about it and I was like, ooh, there's another, they added a letter to it. So, yeah, I ordered it back at the beginning of March, so I'm pretty excited to get that. And I log onto my computer at work every day and I know it's not going to change, but I look at it, I'm like, maybe, no. But, hopefully by the end of the month it'll ship out.
Very cool. So let's maybe step back and talk a little bit about architecture, and because I know that you guys have done some 3D printing. You have what, a TAS 6 in your office?
Yep.
And what do you can you talk about a little bit, like at a 10,000 foot level of what you use that for?
Sure. I won't go into specifics of projects, but so I'm I work on the education side as well as multifamily housing, and we're working with a couple of clients right now in multifamily housing that are really interested in model making or seeing what their designs look like, in front of them. And what we found with that too is meeting with structural engineers and electrical engineers and contractors. We're actually having a physical model that's, the building's yay big and the site's yay big. We usually keep it to whatever the 11 by 11 of the build plate of the TAS, but when talking about, like, say, materiality or structure, I think it was 2 weeks ago we sat down with the structural engineers and we were trying to explain the building to them. And we're like, wait, we have a model of this. And we brought it over and everyone's just pointing like, oh, this part, it's going to have precast structure. This is going to be wood or this is going to be steel. So it's really helpful in those aspects. And since we've got clients on board that are willing to pay for it, I have more time to kind of experiment with tolerances and how to make models snap together so we can print them faster. So instead of having, a massing model that's yay big that takes 24 hours to print, we can do one at a higher level of detail that takes half the time to print.
Very cool.
So, yeah.
And it's interesting to see, that's one of the things that a lot of people are like, oh, well, how do you use 3D printing in the different industries? And it's really nice to see within architecture that the client can actually see and it can give more productivity to that project so that you can actually, so that there isn't an issue down the road like, oh, well, I didn't know that was that because, the print says it's, you can't read the print right because the damn designer didn't do it right.
Well, and the thing that I always have to remind myself is that I look at 2D drawings all the time, or, I use a Revit model and I can spin around and cut through stuff and look at things. But when I look at a floor plan, I can envision what it looks like. Not all clients can do that. So when you have, say, like we use virtual reality very heavily, and then we mix in the 3D models with it, people get it a lot quicker.
Definitely. And you have some virtual reality here too, don't you?
Yep, I've got an Oculus Rift.
What dev kit did you, because it was a dev kit, or did you actually get one of the...
I pre-ordered the beta or the alpha.
Okay. Because I think you played with one at NDSU as well, correct?
Yep. So we had the DK1 and the DK2, and I did my master's thesis. It was, I don't remember what I called it. It was something fancy because it was a master's thesis. But it was in theory, it was like if you can take the Oculus Rift or virtual reality in general and design with it. So there was a lot of like the Oculus at the time was used more for like marketing instead of, because it wasn't like you could take a model and bam, it's in VR like it is now, but a lot of people were just doing it to show off, like, oh, we have this. Where now we're seeing a lot of firms, like ourselves included, that use it during the whole process. So we'll sit a client down in one of our VR labs and we're like, hey, let's walk through the building and, tell us what you think. So
yeah, I think that kind of next step with the whole thing will just, again, help those people feel comfortable with what they're doing. Because like you and I, we can read 2D schematics all day, but the second you put it down like in front of my parents, they're just like, where's that? What's that? I don't know what that means. And so I think like you mentioned, it's really helping kind of close that loop and get everybody on board.
Yeah. And I think with 3D printing, sorry to interrupt you, but it's always, there's a lot of people that always kind of see it as a gimmick, where it's like, ooh, you printed this stupid little trinket, what can it really, like, you paid $1,000 for this machine and you 3D printed a stupid little boat, It's like, I want to break that kind of stereotype where we're making models that show an actual product that's going to be made. Or like, I know you've done a lot of actual part making, that kind of stuff. That's the side I want people to see of it.
Have you seen within like the industry that you're in, clientele and maybe, different architectural firms that you've worked for, have you seen their mood towards additive manufacturing, VR? Have you seen that, increase as far as like, we need this now as part of our business? Or is it more of like in the like, I think that's going to pay for itself in over time?
It's a little bit of both. I think it depends on who you have working for you. So it was easy for my firm to buy a 3D printer because I was working there and I can train people really quickly on how to use it. Where if you don't have someone that knows how to do it, there's a little bit more of a learning curve. So like day one out of the box, we were 3D printing models. Where if you had a staff that didn't know what they were doing, they'd have to do research on how to set up a model for 3D printing, that kind of stuff. So, but there's a lot more resources available now, especially for VR. So
very cool.
It's kind of in the middle. I'd say people are warming up to it, and part of it's probably like, hey, that firm down the street has it, we should get it too. So
They're kind of like rural farmers where it's like, oh, so and so has a such
the new Ford F-150. Yeah.
exactly. Oh, I need that now. What was I gonna say? But no, I mean, thank you for for bringing us in here, letting us see your setup. It's really interesting, because I think we did a podcast a couple years ago. So it's really interesting to see how you've kind of come over the last couple years, and it's interesting to see more of the commercial and industrial side now that they're starting to be like, oh, hey, this is something that we could really utilize within their specific industry. And it's really going to see how that kind of grows from there. So after the Mark II, what would you say is the next printer that would be on your wish list?
So I was this close to buying the new Mini Monoprice Maker Select Mini.
Oh, the new black one?
Yeah, I was that close because it was like, it's $200. Yeah.
What do you think about their Delta?
I haven't heard much about it yet, but for the price tag, it's almost just worth trying out. Well, right now I don't have room for it, but at our next place, who knows?
So you're when you're going to these apartments and looking at new places, you're like, oh, this is going to be the 3D printing room. This is going to be the construction room or the cosplay room.
Yeah, the craft room.
No, the craft room.
Or the quest room, I think is what Katie called it. But so we're, let's see. So it's 2017. For the last 6 or 7 years, I've been really into making props, but I've never really done like a true cosplay. So recently, she's starting to get into sewing. I'd love to, but I can't sew to save my life.
More like watch your fingers as
yeah, exactly. But so she's kind of more interested on that side of it. So as a couple, we're trying to make our own cosplays and do that stuff and go to conventions. So her challenge to me was how we could make our second bedroom into a guest room, but also a prop room. So if we have company, we can flip it so they're not like, oh, these people have their, they wake up in the middle of the night and there's 5 3D printers staring at them, but
and a giant scary mask hanging off the side of the wall.
Yeah, so yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now with it.
So you plan to go like Comic-Con or some local Minneapolis stuff?
Some local stuff. We're going to Anna Minneapolis in 2 or 3 weeks at the end of May or something, and then Metacon is in September.
What are you going as?
Right now, I'm doing a Fallout cosplay, potentially Corvo, and then we're doing a couple's cosplay as Kirito and Asuna from Sword Art Online.
Very nice, very nice.
We bought those costumes. We weren't quite that ambitious, but...
So you can work up to it, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Making modifications to it. That's how I'm going to start.
Very cool. Yeah, we haven't... I don't think any of us in the company have gone to Comic-Con or anything like that. I think we've been to some local stuff.
I went to Anime Detour 2010.
I know John wants to go. I know John wants to go to Comic-Con, so
it's on my bucket list for sure. But that's one of those things where we plan it 3 years in advance, and then I'm going to make a full set of something ridiculous, and then walk around, and people are going to like, "Oh, I want to take a picture." No. But
well, and that's cool. I mean, that's where you can get kind of the younger generation kind of into it and see what they can make with really a simple CNC machine type setup, and in your hallway of your apartment.
Yeah, exactly.
So is there anything else that you want to talk about with Power Up Props or 3D printing or really anything in general that you want to say to the viewers or the people at home, people listening at their desks?
Just do it. It's cheap enough now where I'd say, do your research first, especially with this guy. They have, or say the Mini, it's cheap enough now where I think more people would be willing to get into it. And sites like My Mini Factory and Thingiverse have some really great resources. So I think one of the biggest holdbacks is people are afraid of the 3D modeling aspect, which I totally get. I'm not the greatest at doing that kind of, the prop making kind of stuff. That's all Nick. He's great. But I'd say just go for it.
Are you a cheap filament or a moderately expensive filament? What's your advice on that?
What do you consider yourself?
Moderate, but I mean, having used some of the lower end filaments, for those people that are getting started, what's your, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, like Biome is still by and large my favorite, but it does have a price tag to it. So if you're getting started, Inland Filament from Micro Center. It's $15 a spool. So if you're just prototyping, or if you're going to finish it anyway, I mean, give it a shot. Don't let the price tag hold you back. But there's definitely some filament out there that is just garbage. So I would say you get what you pay for, you know, but you got to get started somewhere.
Well, very cool. Well, I'd like to thank you for bringing us into your hallway here, your workshop.
My workshop.
I'm excited to see where this goes from here, and maybe we'll be back in a couple of years, and it'll be a whole apartment full of 3D printers,
I hope.
or a whole house, basement, anything.
There we go. Yeah.
Well, like I said, thank you, Brian, for your time. And yeah, so if you guys want to keep up with what we're doing, we got a bunch of interviews. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. We're out there on a bunch of different stuff. We're going to try and do more trips like this and more interviews like this on site. So if you guys are in the Minneapolis area and want to have an interview about what you do or have a cool project that you want to share, definitely reach out to us and we'd be happy to come down and talk with you. For that, Jake Clark, Brian Glare, thanks for watching.
Thanks.
Oh man, my arms started getting tired.
Yeah, whatever.
Whatever
I guess it's just natural, but the ones that you claimed were blemished and you gave them to me for like nothing.
Blemished.
I have them at work sitting in my desk because they look awesome, but this was my kind of trial. This one's 50% of full size, and that one's 20.
So it'd be pretty much 4 times as much filament.
Pretty much, but